Most Alaska cruisers make a massive $2,000 mistake before they even step foot on the ship. They spend years dreaming of the last frontier, only to spend their limited port time trapped in a crowded jewelry store or staring through a foggy bus window at a blurry eagle. If you choose the wrong shore excursion, your bucket list trip will feel like a generic theme park rather than a wild adventure. Today, I'm ranking Alaska excursions from the absolute worst waste of money to the life-changing secrets. Stick around. Secret number 1 completely changes how you see the wilderness. Number 12. Generic port walking and shopping tours. Most passengers think a guided walking tour is the best way to see a historic port, but in Alaska, these are often just glorified shopping trips designed by the cruise lines. Imagine stepping off a Royal Caribbean ship in Ketchikan. You're funneled into a historic Creek Street tour that sounds romantic and rustic. But here's the catch. The tour is often 10% history and 90% stopping at jewelry stores that pay the cruise line for recommended status. You see the same Diamonds International sign you saw in Cozumel, and the local souvenirs are often mass-produced overseas. The consequence of this choice is devastating for your vacation. You've traveled thousands of miles to see the untamed wilderness, but you're spending your precious 8 hours in a highly commercialized retail environment. You fighting crowds of 3,000 other people just to look at t-shirts you could buy on Amazon. It robs the destination of its soul. Most cruisers realize they can see all the historic sites on their own for free. You don't need a $75 ticket to walk down a public boardwalk. Use the ship's shopping maps as a guide for what to avoid. Walk the port independently during the last hour before all aboard, and spend your morning on a real adventure. Number 11. Gold panning and mining camps. Gold panning is a charming idea on paper, but modern versions are Disney-fied theater that feels more like a staged rehearsal than a real connection to the Klondike. In Skagway or Juneau, you'll see families standing around a wooden trough filled with warm water and pre-seeded dirt. A guide in a period costume gives a scripted 5-minute speech, hands you a pan, and magically, every single person finds 3 tiny flakes of gold. It's a guaranteed win, which is exactly why it's not an authentic experience. The mining camps are often reconstructed specifically for cruise traffic. They lack the grit, the mud, and the real history of the 1898 gold rush. When you spend $100 on this, you aren't learning about the thousands of men who risked their lives in the mountains. You're participating in a controlled activity that limits your exposure to the actual Alaskan landscape. It's a safe, sterile version of history. If you have kids, it's a fun hour, but for everyone else, it feels like a hollow tourist trap. Skip the panning, tour, and visit the Klondike Gold Rush National Historical Park Visitor Center in Skagway. It's free, authentic, and far more educational. Number 10. Bus sightseeing tours. Bus tours prioritize comfort and accessibility, but they create a physical and emotional glass barrier between you and the destination. Picture yourself on a 50-passenger motorcoach in Juneau. The driver points out a bald eagle in a tree or a whale in the distance. But by the time the bus finds a place to stop and everyone scrambles to the foggier-than-expected windows, the animal is gone. You're viewing the greatest wilderness on Earth through a frame, never truly breathing the air or hearing the silence. The consequence of staying on the bus is that you lose the sensory experience of Alaska. You don't smell the damp cedar or feel the chill of the glacial wind. It turns a wild destination into a passive slideshow. While these tours are great for those with mobility concerns, most passengers book them because they are this safe and cheap option. But what you save in money, you lose in memories. You following a rigid schedule that doesn't allow for spontaneous stops when a bear wanders onto the road. If you aren't limited by mobility, look for small group, van tours, 12 people max, because they can pull over in scenic overlooks where the big buses are banned. Number 9. Ziplining and rainforest adventure parks. Ziplining offers high-energy excitement, but it's often location-neutral, meaning you paying a premium for an experience you could have almost anywhere else in the world. You spend $200 to zip through the Tongass National Forest. While the trees are beautiful, the mechanics of the tour are identical to zip lines in Jamaica, Hawaii, or Costa Rica. You're focused on the harness, the safety briefing, and the speed of the cable. You aren't actually engaging with the unique ecology of Alaska. The consequence is a high opportunity cost. You only have a few days in Alaska. Every hour you spend ziplining is an hour you aren't glacier hiking or wildlife tracking. It's a fun adrenaline hit, but it doesn't leave you with that only in Alaska feeling. Cruisers often realize too late that they could have spent that same $200 on a boat tour that put them face to face with a calving glacier. Save the ziplining for your next Caribbean itinerary and prioritize excursions that involve ice, whales, or native culture. Number 8. Alaska Raptor Centers and Wildlife Sanctuaries. Wildlife sanctuaries offer meaningful education and guaranteed sightings, but they are fundamentally observational rather than immersive. At centers like the Raptor Center in Sitka, you'll see bald eagles and owls from just a few feet away. It is a photographer's dream because the animals are stationary. But there is a distinct difference between seeing an eagle in a flight center and seeing one dive for a salmon in the wild. The consequence of this choice is that it lacks the thrill of the frontier. It's a safe experience. You walk through well-maintained enclosures and listen to expert handlers. It's wonderful for conservation, but it doesn't give you that heart-pounding moment of spotting an animal in its natural habitat. It feels like a very high-quality zoo visit. If this is your only wildlife experience, you might leave Alaska feeling like you missed the wild part of the Wild West. Treat these centers as add-on activities for your free time and book a primary excursion that takes you into the animal's natural habitats. Number 7. Cultural and Totem Heritage Tours. Cultural tours provide the necessary soul of the landscape, and skipping them means you reviewing Alaska as just pretty scenery rather than a living history. Visiting Saxman Native Village or the Totem Heritage Center in Ketchikan isn't just about looking at carved wood. It's about meeting the carvers and hearing the oral histories of the Tlingit, Haida, and Tsimshian people. These stories explain how humans have survived in this harsh environment for over 10,000 years. The consequence of ignoring native culture is a shallow understanding of the land. When you see a totem pole, you aren't just seeing art. You're seeing a legal document, a family tree, and a legend. It gives the fjords and the mountains a voice. Most cruisers are surprised by how much more they appreciate the wilderness once they understand the people who have protected it for millennia. It turns a vacation into a meaningful journey. Look for native-led tours specifically, as having a guide share their own family's ancestral history is infinitely more powerful than a scripted tour. Number 6. Sea kayaking and canoeing. Sea kayaking represents the first real step into true Alaskan immersion because it moves you from the ship's towering deck down to the water's edge. Imagine paddling in Sitka Sound. The water is glassy and dark. Because you have no engine, a sea otter pops up just 5 feet from your kayak, completely undisturbed. You hear the pop of air bubbles escaping from melting glacial ice, a sound locals call Burgee Seltzer. It is a quiet, profound way to travel. The consequence of being at water level is that everything feels bigger. You aren't looking down on the world, you are part of it. You feel the temperature drop as you approach the ice. You hear the eagles calling from the treetops. It's a sensory experience that no motorboat can replicate. Even beginners find that once they get the rhythm of the paddle, the stress of the crowded cruise ship completely melts away. It is pure, undistilled peace. Don't fear the rain. Kayaking in a light Alaskan drizzle is actually more atmospheric and often brings more wildlife to the surface. Just dress in synthetic layers. Number 5. Whale watching expeditions. Whale watching is the most consistently rewarding wow moment in Alaska, but the quality of your experience depends entirely on the size of your boat. Most passengers book the massive ship-sponsored catamarans that hold 100 to 150 people. While you'll see whales, you're often fighting for a spot at the rail. But if you book a smaller 6-pack or 14-passenger vessel, the experience changes completely. When a 40-ton humpback breaches, you feel the spray and hear the massive whoosh of the blowhole. The consequence of a good whale tour is a memory that defines your entire trip. In Juneau or icy Strait Point, sightings are almost 100% guaranteed during the summer months. You might see bubble net feeding, where a group of whales works together to trap fish in a ring of bubbles. It's nature's greatest show. If you stay on the big ship, you're watching a spectacle. On a small boat, you're part of the encounter. Always check the maximum passenger count before booking. The smaller the boat, the lower you are to the water and the more personal the encounter feels. Number 4. Mendenhall Glacier View. Mendenhall Glacier strikes the perfect balance between massive scale and easy accessibility, making it a must-see that actually lives up to the hype. Located just 12 miles from the Juneau Pier, it is a rare opportunity to see an actively retreating glacier from ground level without needing a helicopter. You can walk the Nugget Falls Trail and stand at the base of a roaring waterfall with the blue ice of the glacier just across the lake. It is a sensory overload of natural power. The consequence of visiting Mendenhall is a sobering look at our changing planet. Seeing the retreat markers along the trail, showing where the ice stood just 20 or 50 years ago, makes the beauty feel fragile and urgent. It's educational in a way that sticks with you. Most cruisers find that standing near the ice is a spiritual moment of realizing their own smallness in the face of geological time. It's the quintessential Juneau experience. Skip the expensive $150 ship tour and take the local Glacier Express shuttle for around $45. It gives you the flexibility to stay as long as you want. Number 3. Flight seeing over glaciers and fjords. Flight seeing is the secret to understanding the true scale of the last frontier, revealing a world that is 100% inaccessible by any other means. When you take a float plane from Ketchikan over misty fjords or a bush plane out of Skagway, you see things 99% of passengers miss. From the air, the massive cruise ship looks like a toy. You see hanging valleys carved by ancient ice, untouched alpine lakes, and ice fields that stretch for 1,500 square miles. The consequence of flight seeing is a total shift in perspective. It provides a God's eye view of the wilderness. You realize that the ports you've visited are just tiny dots on the edge of a vast, uninhabited world. It is breathtaking and often leaves passengers in total silence as they stare out the window. It is the only way to truly comprehend the majesty of the Alaskan interior. This is a weather-dependent gamble, so always have a Plan B shore excursion ready in case the clouds roll in and your flight is grounded. Number 2. Helicopter glacier landings and dog sledding. This is the gold standard of cruise excursions, combining high-altitude thrills with a direct interaction with Alaskan culture and ice. You lift off from the Juneau or Skagway airport and fly over the deep blue crevasses of the ice field. Then comes the highlight, the landing. Stepping out onto ancient, crunchy ice in the middle of summer is a core memory. Many of these tours include a visit to a dog sled camp where professional mushers live on the glacier all summer to train their huskies. The consequence of this excursion is a triple threat of memories: the flight, the landing, and the sledding. It is expensive, often $500 to $700 per person, but almost every cruiser who splurges on it says it was the best money they ever spent. It is exclusive and intimate. You are standing where only a handful of humans go each year. It is the ultimate flex of an Alaska vacation. Wear high-quality, polarized sunglasses. The glacial glare from the white snow is intense and can give you a massive headache if you are unprotected. Number 1. Bear and wildlife encounters in the wild. Wild bear viewing is the number 1 Alaska excursion because it is the only experience that is truly unscripted, raw, and deeply humbling. Whether you take a boat to a remote creek or a bush plane to a hidden meadow, there are no fences, no cages, and no costumes. You sit quietly with an expert guide as a 600-pound coastal brown bear wanders into the stream and catches a salmon just 30 feet away. You hear the crunch of the fish and the heavy breathing of the bear. The consequence of this encounter is a profound connection to the earth. It isn't performative, it's survival. It's the one story you'll still be telling 20 years from now. It reminds you that we are just visitors in a world that belongs to the wild. It is powerful, slightly terrifying, and completely unforgettable. Among all the options, nothing else matches the emotional impact of witnessing Alaska's wildlife in its natural, untamed environment. These tours have extremely limited permits and sell out 6 to 9 months in advance, so if you see one available on your cruise portal, book it immediately. Alaska isn't a place you just see, it's a place you feel, provided you get away from the jewelry stores and onto the ice. Whether you're budget-conscious and taking the Mendenhall shuttle or splurging on a bear-viewing flight, the right shore excursion is the difference between a good trip and a life-changing one. If you found these rankings helpful, hit that subscribe button. We redropping a deep dive into the 10 things you should never pack for an Alaska cruise next week.